From practically the moment Heather Hustis brought her newborn Andrea home from the hospital, she's been exhibiting an odd pattern of behavior. She cries violently one moment and smiles blissfully the next.
She would stop the fit of screaming and she would break out into a big smile. It was kind of boggling.
On top of that, Andrea's been vomiting after nearly every meal.
I didn't know what to do, and I said, well, maybe it's something I'm eating. Maybe I should stop breastfeeding her and try formula. Formula didn't make a bit of a difference. It was the same issue. She still vomited.
Heather was always saying, I'm so tired and I get no sleep. It was definitely taking a toll on her.
I was stressed. I had 2 other children to take care of besides her, and of course, Ed not being around, that made it even worse.
At Andrea's 2-month checkup, Heather once again points out the feeding problem to the doctor.
I said, she's got to have reflux. And all this pediatrician would do is stare down at this little smiling ball of joy. And he said, she doesn't have reflux. But within a couple days, she was vomiting even harder.
No matter what Heather tries, Andrea simply can't keep much of her food down. And to make matters worse, her physical development seems to have come to a standstill.
We started noticing that things just didn't seem right. She wasn't turning over. She wasn't even trying to sit up.
She would not keep her upper body still. She had such stiff, jerky movements.
Concerned, Heather takes Andrea back to the pediatrician, determined to find out what's been slowing her daughter down.
I walked into the doctor's office, and I told him, she has jerky movements. She did not seem to be gaining weight. She needs to be evaluated for her developmental delays.
The doctor gives Andrea a thorough exam. He then asks Heather a question that stops her dead in her tracks.
He was asking me how much attention I was giving her, and how much did I feed her.
The doctor goes on to suggest that Andrea's developmental delays may simply be the result of poor nourishment.
It infuriated me. I'm clearly bringing her to you with issues, and instead of investigating the issues, you're going to point the problem back at me. Why aren't you listening to me?
Over the next 6 weeks, she continues to experiment with different foods, but it's clear that Andrea's not improving. By the time her daughter is 5 months old, she's still far from hitting any of the normal benchmarks.
You could see something wasn't right proportion-wise. Her head hadn't grown. I mean, literally, it looked like a newborn still to me. I'm not a doctor, but I know if her head's not growing, her body's gonna suffer.
Andrea wasn't doing everything that normal babies did. She never babbled, never said a peep, never talked.
Tired of getting nowhere with her regular doctor, Heather is determined to find someone who will take her concerns seriously.
I called up the doctors and I said, put me in with the chief of pediatrics, I'm done. Somebody needs to listen to me.
2 days later, she brings Andrea in to meet with the hospital's top specialist.
I broke down in this doctor's office and he could clearly see how concerned I am about my daughter. He could see she was not growing. He said her head was extremely small. She had very bad microcephaly.
Microcephaly is a condition in which the head measures significantly smaller than normal. It occurs when the brain hasn't developed fully or has stopped growing. The condition can lead to severe developmental delays, and in Andrea's case, her jerky movements and poor motor skills are probably related to the microcephaly.
He said, I want to refer you to a pediatric developmentalist. He might be able to get to the problem. That same day, I got a phone call from his secretary telling me that the developmentalist would not take her insurance. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? Who else are you going to refer me to? And she said, there is no one else. We can't help you any longer. And that was the end of the phone call. I was left alone to deal with it myself.
Heather has no idea where to turn next, and the entire family begins to fear the worst for Andrea.
Angie was not flourishing, not eating, not even trying to sit up. She wasn't doing anything.
I just remember telling my mother, I'm afraid she's gonna die. If she just keeps deteriorating, there's nowhere else for her to go.
At that point, it was like, what's happening to my daughter? She could die. I had no clue.
At the end of her rope, Heather takes matters into her own hands and drives Andrea directly to the Albany Medical Center, over 2 hours away.
The doctor came in and he looked at her and he said, "What are you doing in the ER? What are you asking of me?" "I'm asking you for help. She's not gaining weight. Do something. I can't do this anymore."
At Heather's urging, the doctor weighs Andrea and can hardly believe his eyes. The 7-month-old tips the scales at just 10 pounds 9 ounces, almost a full 7 pounds lighter than what she should be.
He was appalled. I mean, he was the first doctor that actually looked at this little girl and said, "Are you kidding me? This little girl has not gained any weight. There's something wrong."
20 minutes later, Heather's introduced to pediatric resident Dr. Danielle Dunitz, who immediately gives Andrea a thorough head-to-toe examination.
She was acting like a 3 to 4 month old. I was immediately suspicious that there was something else going on, given the severity of her delay. But she was smiling constantly, and it wasn't to anything in particular. So I asked Heather, "Is Andrea always this happy?" And she's like, "Yeah, and definitely more so than my other children."
Andrea's smile instantly reminds Dr. Dunitz of a rare genetic disorder she read about in medical school.
A lot of symptoms that Andrea had were pointing to this one disease. Happy demeanor, jerky movements of the arms and legs, developmental delay, issues with growth, speech delay.
She really didn't explain much, but she said one of the major signs was extreme happiness in a baby. And I said, "Happiness? That's a symptom of something?"